we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber, and today I'm joined by Dr. Jamie Glazov. Jamie, how you doing this morning?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you for being here. And for those of you who don't know, Jamie is a prolific author and host of the Glazov Gang podcast. And Jamie, if you could, before we kind of get into the main subjects we're going to talk about today, you could give our audience kind of a brief rundown on your background. And then we want to jump right into your your upcoming book.
Well, thanks so much, Michael. Well, my dad and my mom were dissidents in the former Soviet Union. And maybe it's not so much the former Soviet Union because although it's a little smaller, I'm not so sure that we won the Cold War on many levels. The KGB is still in power in the Soviet Union, and ideologically, I'm not so sure that the left lost because of what we see going on in America. But I've distracted the conversation a little bit. So my parents were dissidents. They fought for freedom. It's a very long story, but we were also persecuted Christians there. And my dad and my mom, they stood up for human rights. We were able to get out of there. We escaped that hellhole. We ended up in the United States. And I'm that story of the child of Soviet immigrants. And I love freedom. I love America. And as I grew up in the West, because we were in Canada as well, I began to see this species called the left. And they were just in love with where we came from.
Yeah.
And they explained to us that they were always explaining that where we came from was great and we need to build that system here. And what an evil entity the left is. And I dedicated my life to fighting the left and to explaining the left.
Yes.
And to exposing, unveiling, and revealing what the left really is behind that mask of humanitarianism that they have. And that's really what I do. And so right now, my book is being released soon, United in Hate. And I show that the left is united with the hateful forces that want to destroy the West and the United States because, you know, we can just start right here because they want to do the same thing. Well, thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you for being here, Jamie. And again, you've spent your lifetime trying to warn all of us in the West of what you saw growing up there. I mean, your parents literally spent time in the Soviet gulag, but a lot of your focus has also been on warning people of the product of intersectionality, the red-green axis. And, you know, your book, United in Hate, this is a re-release, is a great book. It came out originally in 2009. I read this a number of years ago. You know, Annie Cyrus recommended I pick it up. I read it. It's an excellent book. I actually should have grabbed my old copy and not your new and updated one. And guys, right now you can go on Amazon. You can order it pre-release. You can also go to Front Page Mag, to their website, order a copy there. Go to jamieglazoff.com. Pick up a copy. If this is a book that you haven't read the first time, pick it up now, because there's some new additions here, a lot of updates, and there's a lot to talk about the message in here. And again, with where you came from, coming from Russia, and eventually coming here to sound the alarms. You're right. Like, the modern left today has this romanticized fantasy that they pretend, collectivism, socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it, that they pretend that is. But we're seeing the fruits of that now in New York, as things are falling apart, and other states that have gone this path. And we're seeing it with their literal foot soldiers. They're out on the streets in Minnesota and other places around the country. These violent revolutionaries, they can't win in the realm of ideas, so instead they resort to violence. They take states hostage, and they try to emotionally manipulate and intellectually blackmail people into going along with their edicts. But this book does a great job showing this dark alliance, the red green axis, this alliance between modern leftists and Islam. And we're seeing this cancer spread here. I mean, it's essentially gotten to the point where the patient's near terminal in Europe and a lot of countries right now. Like, I will not be at all surprised to see multiple civil wars break out across Europe over the next few years. And a lot is because of this. It's this endless wave of boat migrants that have come in, and they've changed the makeup of many of the major cities across Europe. It's nothing like it was even just a few short years ago. And we're beginning to see this happen here with what's going on in New York, Dearborn, little Mogadishu up there in Minnesota. And this cancer is spreading. We're seeing Islamic centers pop up in Texas, in Florida, in red states right now. And though there is some effort to push back there, we have the same thing going on. And I can't remember if it was North or South Carolina that we just covered this. Sorry, I got people in the Carolinas. I'm getting your two states mixed up. But it's the same thing we see there. This unity between the modern left and Islam to further both their agendas. But at some point, Islam, their end goal is to be the dominant force on earth. Total control, no opposition. They want the entire planet, to be part of their caliphate. That means death to all Christians, death to all Jews, all Hindus, anybody around the world. If you're in any faith other than Islam, they want your head on a pike. And this is how we have to start addressing the problem. But I guess, where do we go first? Because you kind of give history and background information, then you build upon that foundation in your book.
Well, absolutely, Michael. You're very powerfully and correctly stating what the real problem is. And what I did in my book is, because while I was growing up, um, I saw this leftist. First of all, they lie a lot. So they were always saying, whenever you bring up what was happening in the Soviet Union, what was happening in China, what's happening, during the Cold War in Eastern Europe, they would always equivocate. Oh, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. Well, how about what the US is doing? Okay, well, maybe the Soviet Union did this in Eastern Europe, but look what the United States is doing to Canada. And look at what the United States is doing to its allies. Like, they tried to say that it was the same thing. But
Yeah.
this equivocation is really a lie, because deep down, they support those regimes, they support those systems. So even today, even right now, let's say off the top of my head, what's happening with the controversy over the dogs. And so the left will start trying to say, oh, this is racism, and how could you say this? But really, deep down, this is one of my key arguments, is they actually really support what Sharia is doing and what jihad is doing, because the leftist wants destruction. And so what I do in United in Hate is I show the leftist romance with communism, because there was a romance there, and the fellow travelers and political pilgrims. I show the history. They traveled to those monstrosities. The fellow travelers, they traveled to the Soviet Union to worship Stalin and Brezhnev, etc., in terms of the timeline.
Mhm.
And then the fellow travelers, they went to China and worshiped there. They went to Cuba. They went to all kinds of places. And there was a love affair with the communist world. And then after 9/11, I really began to notice it. Islam had, there was the fall of the Soviet Union at that time, quote unquote. Well, what I mean is just in terms of the timeline in 1991,
Yeah.
in 1990, when all that happened, and the left was just defeated. They were so depressed because they really need to worship at the altar of tyranny. And then slowly but surely, Islam began to replace communism in terms of what the left got very excited about. And
Yeah.
so it was especially after 9/11 that I began to notice it, because, oh, they were just in ecstasy. And I document that in United in Hate. So many prominent leftist figures, oh, they were in euphoria in terms of ground zero, because what ground zero represents to them is the destruction of the old world, the
Yes.
destruction of the Judeo Christian tradition. And you need that destruction, because what you do is you destroy the old earth and then you build your utopian paradise on the ashes. Because what the left really is, they hate man for who and what he is. They hate God's creation. So they want to remold and reshape the human being, like the Soviet Union wanted to make the new Soviet man. And
Yes.
so and so, I remember when Bush, he sent, the troops to Afghanistan and then to Iraq, and we started seeing all those demonstrations in the West. And I remember, I'll never forget, there was this one leftist feminist, and she's almost naked, and she's just screaming at this demonstration, Allahu Akbar! And she's screaming it alongside this Islamist guy that's all in this Muslim garb. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, this is pretty effed up. Um, but it's not. It's not. It's actually very normal. This
Well,
woman, this woman would be extinguished within 30 seconds if he had total power and she lived in a place where he had the power. But that's totally normal,
yeah.
because this suicidal death wish is what it's all about. So that's why I buckled down and I began to show the romance with Islam, which is continuing till this day. And now it's even infected the right,
Yeah.
because we see these figures on the right that now have a Stockholm syndrome with Islam and are worshiping it. So that's what I'm interested in, Michael. And as a Christian, I see the spirit of the Antichrist in jihad and in Sharia. And once you begin looking at it through that perspective, it all begins to make sense.
Yeah.
And they're trying to take over the world, as you say. And the left in the West is helping and facilitating that destruction.
Yeah. The left doesn't care if they're signing a compact with the devil. They think that they're going to get what they want, that both sides will further their agenda in this relationship. But this is nothing new. This is what we've seen from the modern left from since time immemorial. I mean, you can go back to, they've always been enemies of freedom and enemies of free will, and want to fought for domination and control. We can even go back to their roots in the Democrat Party. Especially following the Civil War, they really wanted to keep their slaves. They really wanted to keep control over people, advance things a little forward. Remember, prior to World War II, the left was worshiping Hitler and Mussolini, because fascism, I have a copy, I should have grabbed this, a printout of a New York magazine, or New Yorker magazine from the 1930s, where they're talking about, oh, if FDR only had the power of Mussolini and Hitler, see what we could accomplish here if we just could be the administrators of everything and oversee all aspects of people's lives in the United States, that we would be so much better for it. They've always had this lust for power, and they will unite with anybody to get that agenda across the finish line. It's just the target of their aggression has shifted a few times over the years. It was blacks, it was Jews, now it's cis white men, but the target of their aggression shifts over time with whatever they think is most politically expedient to solidify the most power for themselves. They have no consistency, no moral foundation, no anything. It's just an endless chase for power. But the problem with not that like that isn't a problem in and of itself, but the problem with embracing Islam is this is another philosophy that's similar, just seeks world domination. That they even the inherent principles within Islam, taqiyya, they will lie to your face that they think it furthers their agenda for power. They will make treaties that they think that they are weak at that time and can come back stronger within 10 years and dominate you. It really is a It's not a religion. I mean, it's a dominant. It's a political force hell bent on world domination. It, it is a great danger, and we're already seeing the end result of that across of Europe, as we're now having record knife attacks and stabbings, no go zones in the United Kingdom, in France, the Netherlands, all over the country, Germany, and this wave of endless migrants, jihad through immigration, that's now actually causing the near collapse of the German economy. Their 10 largest cities in Germany are bankrupt right now, or on the verge of bankruptcy, just due to the amount of welfare benefits they're shelling out when you have, 70 plus percentage of the people that they let in from Syria and other places, which, by the way, now that the war's over, they're still not going home, are not working. They refuse to assimilate. They are the highest perpetrators of rape, sexual violence within the country by population numbers, and this is not going to change. They are there to dominate and control any new territory they go to. It is not about it is not the religion of peace. Whoever came up with that branding deserves a prize, because that's about the best branding I've ever seen for something that could not be further from the truth. But people said it for years. And you're right. One of the scary things now is we do see people within the Republican Party, and I hate to, Nigel Farage over in the UK leading reform. One of the fatal mistakes he's made is to embrace Islam. Says that the UK can't exist. The future includes Islam. Well, no, we have to get away from that and away from that broken mentality. This is not compatible with Western values in any way. The evidence, it is self-evident. You can look at what happens in any majority Islamic country, or in countries where they begin to gain control and gain power. They immediately start taking that power and oppress others and assert their way of life. And we are beginning to see that here, and that's the really scary thing.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Michael. You are a brilliant man who really gauges and detects really what the enemy is up to at home and abroad. And so my whole life, Michael, I'm very interested in defending ourselves from tyranny and from the totalitarian powers, but analyzing the mindset of the people here in the West that are in alliance, that are aiding, that are abetting, that are surrendering. And yes, there's many different layers, because you've got the useful idiots that are just extremely stupid,
Yes.
but you've also got the ones that talk a good game in terms of humanitarianism, but deep down they're real despots. For instance, even just recently, the period that we're coming out of in terms of what happened when they were, putting diapers on our faces or trying to, and they were trying to put certain ingredients into our bodies. And I'm, being a little bit of a wise guy right now, because there's sometimes where we have to tell the truth and use the words. But then if they're just going to put us in the wilderness because of that, and we can only reach three people by doing that, well, you know what? Then we outmaneuver them a little bit and we don't say a certain word. And then we're able to speak to 200,000 people instead of to two, and then get the truth across. So we're
Yeah.
always using different tactics, because I believe in telling the truth and saying the word. But then I think, you know what? If I can be on a certain channel and reach 500,000 people and just use different words, then I'm going to outmaneuver them. Okay. But that's another discussion of how to fight tyranny. But when we just came out of that period, Michael, what did they want to do with us? The people that didn't want to put a diaper on their face, the people who didn't want to put certain ingredients into their body, what were they ready to do with us? And
Put
that's
us
where
in
the real,
gulags.
right? That's where the real totalitarian face, because they care so much about safety. Whoops. Not only are we not going to have Thanksgiving with this person, but you know what? They don't even deserve to go to a hospital. And if
Yeah.
something's wrong with them, and you know what? Maybe it's a little bit safer for all of us if we just get rid of that person for now. That's the left. And
Yeah.
so, what's happening now, and what I analyze and try to understand, is ultimately there's a death wish here, because there's so much hatred of the human condition. There's so much hatred of humans. If you hate humanity and humans, and you're a human, well, there is a chance that you might actually just hate yourself. And
Yeah.
so, is it a coincidence that leftists went to the Soviet Union to worship there and so many of them disappeared and were extinguished? Is it a coincidence that all the liberals and leftists that supported the communist revolution in Russia, the liberals, were the first ones against the wall when the shooting started? Is it a coincidence that all the leftists that supported the Iranian revolution in 1979 were one of the first ones up against the wall? These revolutions eat their own children.
Yes.
But what I'm interested in is it a coincidence that these children keep getting devoured, or is there something in them that actually want to shed themselves of their own unwanted self? So when we see a leftist feminist travel to Gaza to support the Palestinian cause, and so many of them throughout history, as I show, have been
Yeah.
abused and raped, and then they just, whatever it is that happened to them, did they really go there to help, or is there something much darker involved? And so we see, when people say, "Oh, I just don't understand. Why would the left support these, Sharia supporters? I mean, they're going to lose their freedom right away and maybe even their lives." My answer is, yep. And that's actually what they want. And even though
Yeah.
that's a little bit shocking and people go, "Hey, what's Jamie talking about?" Well, start studying it. And I'll just quickly just put this example on the table for people that are, you know, kind of reluctant to accept that and think that, the person that's saying it is crazy. Off the top of my head, David Horowitz in his memoir Radical Son talks about a particular friend of his uh, when he was a leftist and she was a major leftist. And there was a certain rapist murderer in the neighborhood in a certain area, and the descriptions of him was that he was black, and women were being raped and killed. She believed in humanity, and she's not going to be racist, and she's not going to lock her back door, okay? Because she's going to prove that she's not racist and she's not going to lock her back door. And
Yep.
she was found raped and killed.
Yeah.
My question is, what is that belief system? And is there something suicidal there? They're sacrificing life on the altar of utopian ideals. And
Yeah.
ultimately, in their road to build communism and Sharia and to help communists and Sharia followers build those paradises, it's not only the blood of others that need to be sacrificed, it's your own blood. And that's what United in Hate gives a history of and documents.
Well said. And yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of people call this suicidal empathy, and that is something that is a product of the left. You don't have other political philosophies doing this. Other political philosophies will embrace reality. But, I think a lot of this goes back to these people that of this political ilk, whether it's modern day globalists, leftists, socialists, communists, or Islamists, for that matter. A lot of them, they at the end of the day, if you go through their political philosophy, the one thing that your takeaway should be that they think that they are better than God, that they believe they can build a better man if only given the tools, even if those tools are the tools of oppression. Because ultimately, what are they trying to do? They're trying to reshape human nature. They're trying to, sometimes more than that, sometimes through eugenics and other programs, also reshape humanity. But we won't talk about that or their struggles that they've involved in to wipe out one race or another throughout the decades, the millennia. But modern leftism is this struggle of man against God and trying to especially as it's mutated into all this transhumanism and the other aspects of it that we see more of today, or even the transgenderism. These are mentally ill people that actually believe God got it wrong, put them in the wrong body, and they are now smarter than God and are going to live as their true self. But it's all this just delusional thinking that has infected the left, and I think that's why they embrace things like these jihadis or whoever. Also, like as you said, if you flew gays for Palestine, if you flew them over there, they'd be learning how to fly by the end of the day as they start throwing them off rooftops. But their side of the aisle is so detached from reality, they don't believe this. I mean, there was just another story over this last weekend with some other female blogger in, I want to say it was Pakistan. And sorry, guys, I have the wrong country there, who got assaulted and raped after going over there by herself, trying to travel the countryside and show how peaceful all the Muslims are in whatever country it was. And she's actually lucky, though. At least she didn't end up dead, like most of the other ones that have taken the same journey. But it's refusing to face reality, admit that not all cultures are equal, and some of them are hell-bent on destruction, and some of them are just completely 100% incompatible with modern Western values or modern modern civility in any way, whether that's in Europe, in the United States, in Canada, or anywhere else. It is entirely incompatible with basic human rights and our modern way of thinking. But for some reason, they just keep going back to this. Well, it's like you just can't fix stupid.
Absolutely, Michael. And well, let me even say this, as another example to talk about this. The period that we just came out of, when they were trying to put certain ingredients into the human body.
Sure.
And how many instances did we see of people in a lineup and a person gets the procedure done and then they pass out and they're laying on the floor? You know what I would do in a situation like that, even though I wouldn't be in that particular situation, but if there was a situation like that, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
The people stayed in the line and they continued to move. And what I document in United in Hate in terms of communism, the people, the leftists that traveled to the Soviet Union, so many of them were disappearing. And the leftists themselves, Michael, you and I go somewhere and you disappear. Guess what I'm doing? I'm starting to ask what happened. Where's Mike? They wouldn't
Yeah.
even inquire. They wouldn't even ask what happened to my disappeared friend because you don't want to bring a bad reputation to the movement, to the idea. Jean Paul Sartre, himself was saying, there was at one point where he was saying, let's not talk about what happened in the Soviet Union on several levels because we don't want to disillusion the proletariat. Okay, so you want to push the victims of totalitarianism into invisibility, not to disillusion people for fighting for this brave new world. And ultimately, even if something happens to you, Michael, what you were referring to, what happens to a lot of these leftist fellow travelers under communism and also in Islam. You read about this individual Aragoni that traveled to worship Hamas, and then they ended up killing him. I have an article on that. Um, in terms of how these people go there to actually die. But a
Hmm.
lot of them that are abused, there's many instances in the West where these leftists are abused, are raped, are terribly violated in many ways by the people coming in from the Sharia world, and they
Yeah.
don't even talk about their own abuse.
Yeah.
They try to cover it up because they
Hmm.
don't want to disillusion the proletariat. And you have to sacrifice your life for the idea. So, this is a very scary movement. And this is what I'm dedicated to. And, it's just interesting, even right now, when uh, this particular individual, I think she's a Palestinian activist and a Muslim individual, but she did a tweet about how we got to get rid of the dogs and keep your dogs at home, or
Yeah.
just let's get rid of the dogs, whatever her theme was, in New York. And then the congressman that shot back, and what he said, and now there's a big controversy over it. But the left's first instinct is to say, oh, this is bigotry and this is racism. By the way, Islam is not a race, but that's another issue. But what I'm very
Yes.
interested in is why the name calling and outrage right away? Why don't you just slow down a little bit and take a look at what actually, you know, go research a little bit what happens to dogs in Morocco, in
Yeah.
Turkey, in the Palestinian territories. Go
Well, is it
research and take a look at what's happening with them. And then maybe start reading what Sahih Muslim says, what Sahih Bukhari says, what the Hadith say, what Muhammad is recorded to have said, what Muslims actually believe. And then maybe think, dogs are being killed and tortured in the Muslim world. Do you
Mhm.
have a heart? Can you spend a little bit of time reaching out with your heart and have some compassion and empathy of what's happening to dogs, and then maybe rattle something in your brain a little bit and think, let me read the Quran and the Hadith, and let me listen to what even Muhammad Hijab in England, a very famous video now of him of warning the UK police of what they're going to do to dogs if they come around them. Why wouldn't you spend some time caring about that before name calling? Because they don't care.
Yeah. Well,
Islam, defend Islam, accelerate Islam's conquest of the West. This is our priority because we cannot say that the Judeo Christian tradition is good. We cannot say that it's superior. We cannot admit that there's something inferior and dangerous about Islam because if we admit that, then we might have to admit that the West is worth protecting and saving. But our whole agenda as leftists is to destroy the West. So we can't accept and agree when we see the ferocious monstrosity of the enemy.
well said. You know what's really sad, Jamie, is I bet we could probably get more of these blue-haired moonbat leftists to get behind something to save the dogs. The I think it's 3 million dogs that Morocco is going to execute prior to hosting the World Cup games there.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but we could probably get more leftists involved in signing a petition to try to stop that than we could if we put out a story about how they were going to slaughter 3 million Christians in whatever country. That they would probably be more concerned about the dogs than the Christians. The Christians is like, well, they probably deserve it. That's what they get for being born in a Muslim country. What were they thinking? Um,
You're
because again, this
absolutely right, Michael. The Christians, if Christians are, when Christians are mass murdered and it's continuing till this day, it's always happening, especially in Nigeria. There's just a
yeah,
mass genocide happening there. You won't hear a Christian saying anything about it. But I will say that you are correct. But if they find out a little bit more about dogs, then they might just back up. In the sense that I just want to say this, I've spent quite a long time studying this, and I was always wondering, why are they doing this to dogs? Why is Islam doing this to dogs? Well, it's no coincidence that this is happening to dogs under Islam. But why? Because most people just stop at, oh, like even if they say, even if they admit it, they go, oh, well, yeah. But why? Let us study the nature of dogs. Dogs detect certain things.
evil
And if
spirits.
there and if there is an evil entity that does not want to be seen and detected, you just might want to get rid of something. Um, I'm just going to put this on the table, and sometimes I just don't say words right away because they scare people. So I sometimes just speak in a little bit of equivocation. But there is a possibility that Allah is not God. There's a
Yeah,
possibility that he's the enemy of God. And if you study it very carefully, like Nani Darwish's work that shows that actually Muhammad is the exact opposite of Jesus and Islam is the exact opposite of Christianity, you might arrive at a certain conclusion about what Islam is and what spirit it is and who heads it. There
yeah.
just may be a chance, there just may be a chance that dogs might have a divine quality They may even be angels sent here from heaven, which I believe that they are.
Yeah.
There's a certain entity that would love to torture angels if there was a certain environment where he or certain entities had the power to torture them in a certain environment where they had power. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, anybody that's
But why I brought that up was if you start explaining this to a leftist and they start seeing that it's Christianity involved and the devil and God, I wonder what side they would take right away.
they'd probably start killing the dogs themselves then.
Thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, I mean,
And
you're
people would
exactly.
say that you're crazy. Like what you just said right now, people would say, "Oh, he's crazy." How da 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 da. Da." But if you study the history of the left, Michael, what you just said is completely true.
Yeah.
Once these people get power, just look at what they do. There's a reason why they called the Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge Sartre's children,
Yeah.
because the genocide of Pol Pot and of the Khmer Rouge, the blueprint for that was architected and engineered by French Parisian intellectuals. So these people, these are malicious people. They're just living vicariously through the jihadists,
Yeah.
right? But once you give them the power, you know what they'll do. We know what they wanted to do to Trump. If they and what they almost succeeded in doing to him, and he's correct. He's not just protecting himself, he's protecting us from them. So once they get total power, not only will they do it to the dogs, you know who they'll come for.
Yeah. Well, that's only a short time, short time in the future. But yeah, to your earlier point, and anybody who hasn't read the Quran, um, I don't want to say I'd recommend you should, but you should at least be familiar with it. And Allah refers to himself multiple times as the great deceiver, which is the way that Satan refers to himself. So that's probably a clue of who Muhammad was actually dealing with. And again, that's why this religion, I use that term very loosely, this death cult, is the way it is and is built on domination and will kill to spread their religion. I know they like to blame Christianity on the same thing and point to the Crusades. If anything, it's time for another crusade. We should have put down the threat once and for all back in the 14th century, but we didn't. And unfortunately, at some point, we are going to come up to a final battle there. I want to go ahead and grab this story because you mentioned it a few times, so I just want to bring the headline in here. And this is regarding to Congressman Randy Fine provokes outrage by saying the choice between dogs and Muslims is not a difficult one. They're also going after Glenn Beck for essentially saying the same thing, trying to get him thrown off a lot of terrestrial radio stations. And I don't remember the exact quote that Beck used, but it was essentially that he would choose dogs over jihadists any day of the week and twice on Sunday. But apparently that is Islamophobic and discriminatory and probably racist and whatever else. So they're now trying to use that to throw him off radio. And same thing, there's a bunch of calls for Randy Fine. And I think there's another congressperson they're also going after. I'll double check here in a second. That echoed the same sentiment. But we're seeing this Islamic invasion of New York start to really coalesce now, because it isn't just these recent calls for dog-free zones to protect the sensibilities of the Muslims in New York that are now flocking there under Zorhan Mandami. It's also, Jamie, did you know they're now playing the call to prayer 5 times a day in New York City? How did that happen so quickly?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the Stockholm syndrome will continue, because all of this that's happening, like we said, that somebody like even Megan Kelly, how she responded to the dog thing, right? What is this? How could he say that about Muslims and dogs? You're a bigot. Da, 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 da. Why don't you just sit back for a minute? Just sit back and wonder, why was that said? Let me go analyze this. Like, even if if you're such a coward that at this stage you don't even know why it's being said, but okay, you're a coward, you're a fool, you engage in willful blindness, then go study it. Because when I saw that, I know exactly right away what's going on, because I know the issue. I care about God's animals. I care about God's creation. I know what's happening to them in the Islamic world and how they're being tortured and killed. It's not just the dogs. It's many, many animals that are created by, by God. And there's certain entities that hate that creation and torture them and kill them. And so Megan Kelly, somebody like Megan Kelly, will immediately start, you know, saying names and making accusations. And now, we're getting this call to prayer, and the attack on dogs is on the horizon now. But a very large major a very well, look, I don't know about majority. We can get into the numbers, but a very, very large percentage of our population is either on the side of Islam or has Stockholm syndrome and is just too scared to say anything because they've been trained in a certain way. And what the
Yeah.
left has done brilliantly, see what the left has done, how brilliant they are. They've made Islam into a race. Islam is
Yeah.
not a race, but they've made it a race. And they've made it a race of brown people who are persecuted by white supremacists and persecuted by capitalist Western colonialism. So Islam is the brown minority person that's starving and persecuted because of the
They're
evil
just
white
misunderstood,
supremacists
Jamie.
right now. So if you say anything about Islam, you're immediately a racist and a bigot and a white supremacist who is on the side of white colonialism, and you're against the beaten and oppressed brown minority. And a very large number of people in the West are terrified to be accused of that, are terrified to see themselves even in that light. And so the left is brilliant in how it's running this propaganda game because
Yes.
you're a racist now. Oh, so you want to, so even on this dog issue, on the Nigerian issue in terms of persecution of Christians, on even being against the call to prayer,
Yeah.
you're immediately relabeled a racist. But on the other realms of the left, they're very happy this is happening. They want to destroy the Judeo Christian tradition. Michael, you referred to it earlier. They reject God and they
Yes.
reject our imperfection because there's original sin. Adam and Eve got kicked out of Eden, and our way back is through saying mea culpa and for repenting for our sins and accepting Jesus Christ as our Savior. And for our Jewish brothers and sisters, we may disagree on the Savior, and of course, and I don't mean, but there's other things we agree on. I don't mean to minimize that. I'm just building a bridge here, in the
Yeah.
sense that, in the sense that our Jewish brothers and sisters, we believe in the same God and we share a lot. They believe in the coming of the Mashiach and they have their own belief in salvation, but we share a lot there. And the left and Islam, they hate what the Jewish people and what us Christian people believe in because we believe that God is perfect. We're not perfect. Okay, so
Yes.
we share that. And salvation comes from up there, and that we must be constantly saying sorry for what we do wrong and we're imperfect. But the left believes that they are God.
Yes.
They are the self-appointed redeemers, and we can get back to Eden on our own without God. And
Yeah.
we get to decide who are the damned and who are the saved. So they get to decide who is in the way of their utopia, and you know what they're going to do with them, right? So
Yep.
in communism, it's the gulag. With Sharia, we know what they do to non believers. It's the same thing. But they are going to scorch the earth and then build their paradise on the ashes. And they're willing to take themselves along with it. But so at this moment, when the call to prayers, all this stuff is starting, we see what's happening in Texas. They're starting to even build certain Sharia cities. Pretty soon, they're going to be making sure that we have the right, the males have the right beard, the women have the right hijab on, and many on the left will be supporting this because
Yeah.
they want to destroy the Judeo-Christian foundation of the West and of this country.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt about that. I mean, luckily, I am going to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think we're anywhere near half the country going along with this. I think it's the vocal 20 to 25%, your hardcore blue-haired moonbat leftists that are accepting and promoting it. I do see things shifting there. The
Well,
other
Mike,
thing is,
I'll just one
uh,
second.
mhm,
So we might get into the numbers, okay? But how many people did it take to perpetrate 9/11?
yes,
So we
yeah,
might be in disagreement over numbers, but let us both agree that there can be a majority that might be silent and not active, and
sure.
that a very small minority of people might actually succeed in conquering a country.
Yeah, I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. But the other thing is, I think a lot of their weapons are not effective anymore. I think calling people racists and all this other stuff, that's losing its edge. People don't care anymore because words mean nothing when you have reality in front of you. So that is another good thing. So we don't want to just dwell on all these negatives and its doom. We need to address things as they happen. So I do think we've taken away some of their tools, and I don't think it's anywhere near as high a percentage as a lot of people do. But to your point, it doesn't take that large of a group. And even if the other people that lean to the left that aren't full on moonbat crazy, if they're not voting against it or they're still voting for it, then it's the same thing regardless. We do need to take a quick break here from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with even more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, hello everybody. It's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. But I'm sure for this, I hope I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
All right. Thank you for staying with us. And again, the best way to support our program and all the great programs here on Ex American News is by supporting our sponsors. So please go to lutfstudio.com right now. Pick up a unique, one-of-a-kind, handmade piece of art from Annie Cyrus. And remember, if you see a piece on there that you like, but it doesn't quite match your leopard print couch, you can email her on there. She will get back to you with a price and approximate delivery date and create that custom piece for you. And again, I also want to remind you guys, her new book, Architecture of Jihad, just went up for sale on Amazon. Now, right now, you can only get the Kindle copies. It is coming in a print edition soon, but she's pretty close to getting on the bestseller list on Amazon right now. So please go out there. It's only $10 right now. And trust me, this book is worth your while. Get Annie's new book, Architecture of Jihad. And then while you're there, go ahead and pre-order United in Hate, Jamie Glazov's new book as well. Get that in your cart because it's still on pre-order there. Jamie, what's the release date for the new book when it ships out?
It's coming out in a week, and I strongly recommend everybody get Annie's book. Annie's book is just brilliant. I've read it, and it's going to make a big difference and speaks a lot of truth. But Mike, I want to say very quickly here, um, I think we are in a major disagreement, or maybe we're just talking past each other, because when you say that we're not even close to anything yet, it depends what layer we're speaking about. Okay, because on some levels, Michael, we are already a conquered nation. And I believe that it's very dangerous on many levels to be speaking in that way. And maybe we've just misunderstood each other. But for somebody to say, oh, that's a far way off, we're not even close. No, 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 no. We are already a conquered nation. Islamic blasphemy laws are already operating here and in control. There are certain things you can't even say about Islam anymore in our society, in the establishment media. And if you say them in the independent media, you still, on YouTube and other places, will get kicked out, or hate speech, or we see what's happening to many, even what happened to Judge Janine just a few years ago on Fox News, and what she was reprimanded for in terms of some of the things she was saying about Sharia. We know that on Fox News they can't have certain people back anymore, and they don't have them back because there is a certain line you have to toe. When you talk about Islam, you have to use the word Islamist or radical Islam. You can't invite somebody on even Fox News. Can't invite Robert Spencer or Annie Cyrus on Fox News and start asking them about jihad and start asking them about the real sources of jihad. We're already conquered, Michael, on those levels in terms of Islamic blasphemy laws. We're already conquered in terms of even these calls to prayer happening in New York, what can and cannot be said about it. Yes, there is rumble and we can go here and there, but many of us are on the run in the sense of where we can say something and not be penalized. So let's not underestimate that these dark forces are already operating in the United States, even in terms of open borders, in terms of what can be said and not be said, in terms of what these illegals are doing, in terms of what they're perpetrating. So we need to have hope, and we need to fight and stress where we still are surviving, but we should not be minimizing the inroads that the enemy has already achieved.
Sure. But yeah, again, the left's numbers are not near the point they need to really solidify total power yet. Especially again with the number that we're seeing right now. We've diminished support for the Democrats. They're at an all-time low. So things are trending our direction. We just have to leverage it and actually do something with it. And the big thing is find courage for Republicans to not cower and allow some of this kind of the censorship and other self-censorship and stuff to continue.
Yes, but Michael, you can talk about the numbers of the Vietnam War. How many people in America really supported the
Well, Jamie, we're
American
kind of off on a
effort to
sidetrack here
save?
because, again, we're talking political power numbers, voter numbers. So when their
Right, but I'm
party,
saying that the numbers, there can be a small minority that achieves in installing totalitarian measures in the society if a large majority of people are silent and not active.
sure, eventually. But again, the point I'm trying to make is they're not there yet. And we are gaining ground right now as they are being diminished. It may not feel like it right now, but their numbers are collapsing. Their funding's at basically zero right now. And honestly, Republicans would be doing a lot better if we actually had people on our side fighting, carrying forward the agenda we actually voted for. If we had the DOJ carrying out mass arrests of deep state criminals, people from the Epstein list and whoever else, instead of pretending there's no problem there. On our side, the biggest problem we have right now is demoralization. But support for the left and their broader agenda right now is diminishing. But this is way off on a side tangent right now. But
No, I think
because, yeah,
what you're discussing is the key issue, Michael. This is something we have to discuss, and I would, we would disagree on that level in the sense of what's happening to the Iranian people right now in Iran, and the almost non-conversation that's happening in the West about it, and how the West and how even our friend Trump has betrayed the Iranian people up till this point, shows who's in control. And
yeah.
that's how I look at it. If the Iranian people just, if 100,000 Iranian people were just massacred, and the U.S. president promised to help them, but he didn't, and the U.S. media and culture don't even discuss it, then the enemy has already won on several realms. That's my point.
Well, yeah, that's more on the global stage, though. But yeah, we do need to discuss that. U.S. talks with Iran reportedly fall apart. Is war coming? And the boss is getting fed up. Trump advisor warns 90% chance of U.S. strike on Iran within weeks. And if you look at the betting market right now, those numbers are probably closer to within the next weekend. And something's interesting with these betting markets is they've been right more often than not when compared with political analysts and strategists, that people will put their money where their mouth is there because there's a financial benefit to it. But yeah, with Iran, like this whole situation has been screwed up from the very beginning. It's Trump. Trump kind of hinted that there would be support coming. Then we found out right after that Israel had cut a deal with Iran not to get involved during this revolution early on back in December. Now things have changed. But I think it's also Trump going around making these deals with the devil with Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. They're now holding hostage trillions of dollars in investment they promised in the United States. But the bottom line is we should be doing the right thing. We shouldn't be cozying up to any of these countries in the Middle East, and taking Iran off the board is ultimately, even if you just want to look at it for a selfish reasons, it's better for us in the long run. Eliminating the bank, the clearinghouse, and the institutional wisdom that's contained within Iran that's funded and guided Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, you name it, any terrorist institution across the globe, pretty much, they have their fingers in that pie. At the very least, they're assisting financially, providing intelligence, communications, and other tactical information that they're then utilizing. They're commanding a lot of them, obviously. Taking them off the board is a good reason for that. It helps the whole Middle East. Not to mention our big enemy right now, which is China. Right now, China buys 90% of Iran's oil. And suddenly that's pulled off the market. They're not going to be moving on Taiwan anytime soon unless they want to do it in rowboats. So eliminating the Iranian government, the Islamic government, and freeing 90 plus million people from their oppression they've been under for the last 47 years serves our interest, it serves the world's interest, and it serves the interest of the people of Iran. I hope something happens very, very soon, because at the end of the day, Iran's people will be free. It's just a matter of, is it going to be 80 to 100,000 dead or 3 million dead before they topple the regime?
Well, absolutely, Michael. But the problem, I just want to emphasize when you say it's global, and I get you in the sense of, let's say certain numbers or whatnot. But again, I want to stress that, look, Stephen Coughlin in his book Catastrophic Failure documented this, and I talk about it in my work. The advisors in US foreign policy have a Muslim Brotherhood mentality. The Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated, the deep state has infiltrated the United States. And
Yep.
up until Trump tried to turn some of that around, our policy with Obama and Biden, it was being manufactured and led by the Muslim Brotherhood in terms of all these front organizations, care, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to stress again that the very fact of what's not being talked about in our society by our establishment media, by our authorities, how we're not acting. Yes, this is a global thing, but it shows that we are also being controlled already in terms of how we think and in terms of
Yep.
how we can speak. Michael, people argued what you are arguing right now in Europe for many years. Oh, that's a far way away. That's a far way away. Europe is gone now, Michael.
Yeah.
It's gone. And Bruce Bauer wrote a book while Europe slept, and it's gone because the lips were sealed. You think a majority of Western Europeans deep down support the conquest of Western Europe by Islam? No. But it's not about the numbers. It's about who was in control and who wrapped the mouths and who blindfolded the people. In our country, Michael, if we obey Islamic blasphemy laws, which we are obeying right now, we will not, this epic city that's starting, the calls to prayer that are starting, we won't be able to stop this unless we have the courage to speak about Islam honestly. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's the other way around. The people who speak honestly have to go on little web TV stations somewhere. They can't be on the major networks, and they're punished and they're penalized. So it's a great danger, Michael. We are already conquered on several realms in terms of how we can think and speak. And it only takes a small minority of people to achieve that. And that's what happened to Western Europe.
Sure. Yep, I agree. And the institutional rot, that's something that we do need to figure out a way to roll that back. I mean, what are the avenues to do that? Because the big media organizations, they're going to continue to do whatever's most profitable for them, or whatever they think, brings the most eyeballs on or furthers their agenda, which is primarily globalism, or seems to be. It's, the deep state narrative. So what do we do then to roll back these things that you're talking about that are right now isolated in New York and a few other places? Or what do we do to combat the censorship online? What are the solutions there?
Well, Michael, now this is a real conversation here. So we have to talk about solutions if we admit a problem.
Yes.
And the left has conquered us. This is what trying to stress. There might be a whole bunch of people for for the GOP, and the leftist numbers might be falling over here. Okay, we got that. That's a certain chapter in a book. But I'm talking about a very important chapter. And that chapter is who controls the boundaries of discourse. And the left has achieved that. The left controls the boundaries of our discourse on a national and establishment level. Look what's happening in Virginia. They're already pursuing a certain political atmosphere there, and a policy where even speaking critically about Islam can lead to charges now. So this is they're on the roll. We're not on a roll. They're on a roll. And we face a very big problem. So they have succeeded, as I said earlier, the left has succeeded in Islamic blasphemy laws that we cannot say anything about Islam. We might be allowed to talk about extremists, because this is what we have to accept, that there is Islam, which is a beautiful religion, but there's some extremists that have misinterpreted it, and there's some fundamentalists, like there's extremists and fundamentalists in all religions. So you might get away with that, but unfortunately that's not going to work, because unless you get to the foundations of Islam and you're able to talk about it honestly and really do something about it. And but so this is a very big problem here. And this is, Kenneth Levin wrote a book, The Oslo Syndrome, and he writes about how many Israelis, this is another thing, the majority of Israelis might have very well understood that Oslo's not going to work, but it didn't matter, because it's the people in power and it's the willful blindness that led to Oslo and led to October 7th being made possible. People under siege have a certain Stockholm syndrome, and Kenneth Levin has documented this. So when you face such a scary scenario, that there actually is an ideology that's teaching its people that we just going to kill you. We hate you and we're going to kill you. Michael, so many people, they can't operate on that. They just can't accept that. They want to believe, oh, these people want the same as us. Very recently somebody was arguing on my Facebook page because I had put something up about Palestinian mothers being in ecstasy when their kids die. And somebody told me, what are you talking about? All parents care about their kids. No, no, no. In Islamic ideology, and if you go and research it, the mothers are in ecstasy when their shaheeds die in battle because they believe that they go to heaven. This is a completely different way of thinking. These people are not like us, right? And so this isn't, we're not allowed to talk about that in the West. It's too politically incorrect. And I'm not talking about all human beings. This is what we have to stress. We're not talking about all Muslim people. We're not demonizing a whole group of people. There are many Muslim people who don't follow the Quran. They don't follow the Hadith. They're considered bad Muslims by Islam, but they're good Muslims for us because they don't want to follow Surah 9:5 to kill us, right? What I'm getting to here, Michael, is there is a real need for most people to believe that these people are just like us. All people are just like us. We want the same thing. Oh, these people are a little bit upset over here. Let's just give them some land. Let's just give them some money and a couple hugs, and things will be okay. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the situation. So, what we have to start with is accepting that there are ideologies that are hateful that want to destroy the West. Then we have to make the next move in terms of protecting ourselves from them and speaking honestly about it. But we are confronting a big test if that happens, Michael, because what the West is really trying to avoid is, and then that's where we have to bring the experts in to discuss it and what we're really going to do. Once you accept that Islam is a problem, Mike, we got a huge problem on our hands, right? Because it's easier to deal with, oh, it's just radical Islam. Islam is a religion of peace, just the radicals. That we can kind of work with, right? But if Islam is the problem, then we got a huge problem on our hands. How does a democratic society that believes in democracy and equal rights and et cetera, how does it deal with that with members of this ideology? And that's for your next show, and bringing on the experts and talking about how, as a democracy that still believes in freedom and the equality of people, can deal with how what we need to do with an ideology that wants to destroy us, and how we deal with the people that are a part of it. That's the big test. But until our society is ready to take that on, we're going to continue losing.
Well, and I guess that's really the question I wanted you to answer right there is what do we do to get people forward to that next step? Because otherwise, I don't really see a way out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is a very important discussion. And the first step is to start having a very serious national conversation about Islam. And, and it's great. Sometimes I think, even though it's so unfair how they responded to this congressman and how they're trying to censure him and what they're trying to do to him, at least he started this conversation and he's ignited the conversation, because we have to have a very honest conversation about what this ideology is. And then we have to start having a very serious conversation about how, as a Western free society, we deal with these totalitarian ideologies and the people who follow them.
All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us. We are about out of time. Jamie, what's the best place for our audience to find you and follow you?
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm the editor of frontpagemag.com. We are on the front lines of fighting the war at home and abroad. So this is what we're dedicated to, not just those foreign enemies, but they're here, and the people that are aiding and abetting them. How the left aids and abets our totalitarian enemies. That's what frontpagemag.com is dedicated to. So visit us there. I also have my own website, jamieglazov.com. And of course, our TV show that discusses all of these things, the Glazov Gang. We are on Rumble. We are on YouTube. Thank you, Michael, for also being a part of the Glazov Gang and doing such an incredible job as a host when I disappear sometimes. And Annie Cyrus is our producer, and she's just an incredible, wonderful freedom fighter. And right now, I've come out with my book, United in Hate. And please go to Amazon.com and get it, or you can go to frontpagemag.com and get it. Michael, we're in a serious conflict and war right now, and I so appreciate you giving me the time and attention.
Well, again, thank you for being here once again. Yeah, we'll definitely get you back on. And, Annie and I have been trying to get like a roundtable discussion on a couple things together for a while now, especially with everything that's going on in Iran. So we'll have to get that figured out one of these weekends and have a nice long form discussion about a variety of these issues. Do something 2-3 hours, take some audience questions. To our audience, thank you guys for joining us today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. And we'll be back tomorrow with even more. Thanks again, guys.